As I mentioned, I'm Ethan Evans. I'm here with David Anderson. I'll give him a chance to introduce himself more in just a second with his background. We're here today to talk about what makes a senior manager stand out. The first thing I will say is we will end this session with some Q&A. And because of the large number of people here, the way we do Q&A is we always ask you to use the Zoom Q&A tool. So there's a tool, you can find it under the three dots in your Zoom window, where you can go in and add a question you want us to answer, but most importantly, you can vote on the questions of others. And the reason that matters is there's way over 100 people and probably more coming. We want to make sure that in the time we have to answer only a few questions, we answer those that are of interest to the most people. So I'm sorry if you have a highly personal question today that's all about you, it probably won't get answered. But if you have a general question about what makes leaders stand out, whether individual contributors or managers, in the eyes of their manager and skip level for promotion, put that in and we'll be happy to address it if it's most popular. With all that said, let me give you my background in case you don't know me. I'm Ethan Evans, trained as an engineer, spent 12 years in small companies, in startups, joined Amazon, was there for 15 years, working on Prime Video, video games, etc. That's where I worked with Dave. We worked together for about a year. And then finally I became a coach, teacher, and writer. Dave will tell you his own journey. It's somewhat parallel. And here's a slide about him he can go over.
Yeah, it's actually extremely parallel. So I was also trained to be an engineer, did that for 8, 9 years, moved into management, got hired by Amazon, as the lowest level engineering manager. A lot of people get hired in at a higher level than that. And got promoted a number of times up to director, ended up working for Ethan because actually, funny enough, considering what Ethan does now, I'd seen him give a talk inside of Amazon. And I was a bit jaded at the time, thinking like I sort of know what I'm talking about. And Ethan was talking about a topic I cared a lot about in terms of hiring and promoting people. And I thought, whoa, okay, I actually learned some things. This is great. So I went to work for Ethan and then left to Bezos Academy for a bit, do some nonprofit work and help them get started. And then went off to do my own thing, which is writing. So I write a newsletter now, and that's my main thing outside of hobbies.
Yeah, and if you haven't, I think Jason will put the newsletter link in chat if he hasn't already. I highly recommend Dave's newsletter. We look up to it, Jason and I. Of course, both subscribe, but also we sort of follow. David puts a lot of effort into his writing, and I think he has a unique style where he's very good at sort of giving the internal dialogue of what is going on inside of a manager's head. And so highly recommend that. I see some people in chat saying that it is an amazing newsletter that they follow. So with that, that's enough intro. Let's talk about a few key ways that managers can stand out. And I think one of these is to have a laser focus on the top priorities. There is always too much work to do. Dave, what did it mean for you and for the people under you to really focus on the right work, not just doing a lot of work?
Yeah, I think part of this is that you're talking about what makes you stand out as a senior leader versus just a person who gets their good work done. If I think about an engineer working on their projects, and a lot of being successful is your checklist of things, you're keeping track, you're not falling behind. But especially as you get higher level, you start to get this really weird imbalance where one or two projects are almost all the value for the year. Like everything else is just sort of, we assume you'll get those bug fixes done. We assume you're going to get those other projects done. That security review will probably get filled out on time, and if it doesn't, someone will get it done. But then there's like that one big launch, the one big thing the only thing the SVP knows about, the only thing your VP knows about for what your org is doing. And that's the thing that like has visibility, really, really, really matters. I used to like to say, if you got everything else done and this failed, you probably failed for the year. And if you got just that done and basically everything else slipped and failed, you probably had a pretty good year. And so like it's sort of table stakes to do your job in general, but you can definitely spend 90, 95% of your mental energy on like the one thing. And it makes a big difference. Like just making it more likely to be successful, communicating better. When someone says, by the way, how's that going? That today's status, not like, well, at last I heard last week. So really, really focusing just on that.
Yeah, I often express that slightly differently, which is I ask people, today's Friday. Uh, there's a lot of people here. What did you each do Monday morning? Well, typically, a few of you know exactly what you did Monday morning because it was a big important event, but most of you are like, Monday, gosh. And you'd have to look at your calendar. And that's a little bit of a way of showing some of the things that fill up our calendar and fill up our time aren't that important if we don't know what they are 3, 4 days later, let alone a month, let alone 6 months. And so, as much as you can, getting good at, yes, I have to do a bunch of this work, but there are these signal moments and key projects that stand out.
Yeah.
So a second thing we think really matters, particularly in larger companies, I think, is having enough connection into your peer organizations to get cooperation. Because often in a big company, look, the reality is they have their own priorities and their priorities and yours often don't align. And so the problem is, what did we just tell you? We just told you focus on your top priorities. But you go to another group, and if they're doing that well, it means ignoring you because you're not their top priority. And so how are you going to get the attention you need? And Dave, say a little more about your experience with that.
Yeah, I think we could only dream of having a stack ranked list of priorities across the company. So someone could just run a report and see what they're supposed to be working on. And it's definitely not that. Like there's competing priorities from 20, 30, 40 people, and it's loud and it's noisy. And what pretty much all of us learn how to do is sort of filter a lot of it out and say, if someone forces me to do that, I'll do it. Otherwise, I'm sort of going to ignore them, except that you have these personal connections with people and they help you filter out the noise as well. When someone you trust comes and says, and I mean, you trust them in part because they don't come to you for every little thing. And they say, hey, Dave, I know you guys are busy, but there's this one thing we really need from you guys, and here's why. And it makes such a massive difference in being successful when you have these kind of relationships. And I think as a manager, like a line manager, it begins to be important, but like making your team just get stuff done is useful. And being a line engineer or maybe a principal engineer, it's still, you can sort of like heroic it by just being successful. But as you get higher levels, so much of getting things done becomes making 5 organizations do work because they all trust you and know you and want to do whatever they need to be able to make sure you don't fail. When I moved into the devices org, it was just like the moment standing out. I didn't know anyone in the org. I was given this team to run that was the technology for kids tablets. And it was like the first week or second week, I was just doing all my first one-on-ones. I was asking like, how are things going? Like what projects are we running? And during like an organization meeting, they said, the biggest problem is we're completely blocked now on this identity team. Like they have this authentication thing that we really need to change to. And it's a nightmare. It's been going on 2 weeks. We've been totally blocked. And it's bottlenecking more and more of our work. We're getting ready to escalate, but we don't really know who to talk to. Do you happen to know anyone over there? And I totally did, because my previous team, I'd worked with them already and I had good relationships with them. And I said, oh, I got this. Like, this is exciting. So I went up like 3 levels of management to a friend of mine and say, hey, how are things going? I'm in this new group. And by the way, they say they're blocked. And he's like, oh, I had no idea. What are they blocked on? And I explained it. He says, okay, just give me a few minutes. 10 minutes later, one of my team members comes in and says, oh my gosh, they're working on our work right now. What did you do? And so it was just like this, holy smokes, I've added value. And I think it sounds silly, but it's also like super fun to be able to say like human connection really, really works. Like it's just the way you blast past all of that red tape, put your work in the queue. What's the priority? Well, you'll have to, get this onto our project list. It's like, oh, or I can just go talk to your manager and we just get everything done. So.
Yeah. And I agree with that strongly because I often tell people, think of it this way, right? So today is Friday. It's a great example. You get 2 calls today. One is from someone who's close to you that they're a friend, you hang out, you've worked together, and they say, oh, hey, sorry, it turns out I'm moving apartments this weekend, and even though it's supposed to rain, I really need someone to come carry boxes. Well, if it's a good friend of yours, you're like, well, okay, even though it's Friday night, and maybe like this isn't my idea of a good Friday, I will come help you. Whereas with someone you don't really know, like a distant coworker or somebody, you wouldn't do that. You'd be like, oh, well, I'm sorry, that sounds tough. Well, the same thing happens at work. Um, very much. And so, if you want to stand out, you have to build these connections. Now, some people will quickly hear, oh, you need to suck up to everybody. And that's not what either of us are saying. We're saying be a decent person who works well with people, explains things clearly, doesn't bother them for small stuff, pays back favors, because they're going to come to you too, wanting to get stuff done.
Yep.
So I think it's about building relationships, which we don't have enough time here to go into everything about building relationships. So instead, we'll keep going. We talked about a couple things to do. Now let's talk about a couple of mistakes to avoid. And I think the mistake to avoid here, well, one of them is angering your team. And this might seem super obvious, not to anger your team, but Dave, say a little bit about what you mean when you think of this.
Yeah, I think that getting things done gets into people's heads a lot, and they're trying to impress their manager and their skip manager, and especially as you worry about an important project failing or you're excited about hitting some date that you think will impress your management team. Like especially org leaders don't have a lot of levers. One of the levers they can pull is like, hey, you all, telling their team, you all need to work really hard on this. I'm sorry, like you have to work late nights. You're going to have to work on the weekends. We need to get this out. And you can do that once in a while if you've built a lot of trust and your team really trusts you and likes you. And you can destroy your team by doing this for no good reason. For, like, sorry, we, didn't get good requirements, but you're going to just have to work the weekend anyway. Sorry, we decided to pull the data in. We thought it'd be better for marketing purposes. So, you're all screwed over because of this some business decision. I think it's a certain type of manager personality that causes this, but it's, thinking of the team as these are the people who are going to do work so that I look good, so that our org looks good, so our org is successful. And in the short run, you can make your team effective and hit dates and stuff by pushing them really hard and, having unreasonable expectations and focusing really hard on yourself and, sort of like the managing up only instead of also managing down in terms of managing the people on your team. And so I've definitely seen like the long-term impacts of some people who just like didn't build a good relationship with their team. And similar to the peers thing, you get a lot done because the people on your team like you and respect you and want to help you out. And the opposite definitely happens if they're saying, I'm take it or leave it. I could sort of want to change teams when I have a chance. And so makes a big difference.
Yeah. Look, almost everyone here listening, whether you're in tech or in some other tech adjacent field, you work in a place where people are volunteers at some level. They're not digging ditches where you can easily measure yards of dirt moved. They're doing work that they can either put their heart into if they're motivated, or they can kind of look busy and they can give the extra mile or not. And if you're the sort of manager who inspires people, the sort of leader, by the way, if you're a senior IC, you can also be a leader in this way. If you inspire and excite people to want to do more, sometimes you will get a lot more done. And if you, frankly, inspire is a two-way word. If you inspire people to want to ignore you and hide from you and get out the door as soon as they can because they feel used, you will pay for that. And so remember, a leader is only as good as their team, right? A coach can't win the game all by themselves. And you have to get people to want to play for you. To use a sports analogy again. And if they don't, it doesn't really matter how much they're paid or how easy it should be, right? We all know the story of the so-called gelled team, the team that has come together that may not have any stars and yet somehow outperforms and overcomes the much larger team. I won't go in terrible depth at this, but when I launched the first version of what became Amazon Prime Video, we had a team of 6 and it became a team of 9. And we read this story in Wired long ago that Yahoo had 400 people working on the same problem. And so we were very demoralized, like, okay, we're good, but there's 9 of us. What do we do against 400 people? But they were poorly led, and they have no product, never did. It all got shut down. All those people got fired, and we went on to build what became Prime Video. So now let's talk about the second point about peers. And here again, maybe this seems like an obvious point, which is, are you a leader who supports your peers, the people that you will depend on, that network you need, or are you somehow abrasive to them? And so again, I'll invite Dave, because he has a story to tell here, to first talk about the abrasive part and then roll into your example.
Yeah, I think it's it's in some ways the counterpoint of the like making connections is how you get things done. I think especially when we're talking about our peers, and it's very easy, companies like Amazon or like Facebook, to feel a little competitive with your peers, because there's some amount of my managers looking at all of us for who gets the next big opportunity. I want to look good. And you can do that in a friendly, like, I'm going to just do my best way. And there's definitely easy ways of being abrasive. Like I've seen plenty of people who would gently snipe at each other during meetings or call out some weakness that they know that the other person has in public, just to make sure that everyone notices how bad that they've done. And in the short term, again, it doesn't damage you. In the longer run, like, you build these reputations, and your reputation is such a massive tool that you have. In my example, which I was trying to think of an example for myself, and I thought actually the other way around is sort of fun, which is my manager at one point said, "Hey, this peer of yours is going to be going up for promotion soon, and we want to see them have a larger organization." You essentially said, you guys are equivalently skilled, but you're earlier in your career, timeline wise, experience wise. How do you feel about reporting to him? And if you don't want to, that's fine. It'll just like essentially put a damper on his promotion prospects. And if you report to him, that's obviously a good sign. And I thought about it briefly, and I said, yeah, you know what? I could totally report to this person. I think they're skilled. They're very friendly. I could see them being supportive of me, communicating well. And so I essentially volunteered to go down one level in the management chain to report to a peer of mine. And in large part, that was just because I felt like this person has been, as a peer, very supportive, skilled, engaged, like caring, offers help when needed. And I didn't have a problem essentially helping him out with his career. And you have to imagine how good that looks to my manager, which is his manager, in terms of, wow, if this guy can convince a peer of his to just voluntarily report to him, he must be totally ready. Like, he's building the right relationships you want to see in your leaders. And so I think that that's just like, if you can get to the point where a peer of yours would say, sure, I'd love to report to them. Sure, I'd love to work for them on their project. That's a really big milestone if you aim for it.
Yeah. And I agree strongly that your ability to work well with peers so that they are happy to support you. Look, peers, they write your peer feedback. They are also at some level your competitors. And we're actually going to talk about that a little bit next. But there's a way to compete that acknowledges, look, yes, we all want to grow over time. And there's a way to compete where you seem like someone I can't trust and I need to treat with sharp elbows because that's how you're treating me. And that's not usually what's going to get you where you need to go. Yep. So before we go to Q&A, the final point we want to discuss is what really makes the final difference. So relationships, doing your job, the stuff we've covered are the sort of baseline. But Dave and I are violently aligned that really to stand out, you need some big accomplishment that you can hang your hat on, that can be the storyline. In the way I think of it is the elevator pitch or the tweet about why now? Why should we move you up now? And it's this one or two things that can be summarized. How do you see that, Dave? Do you have a different spin on it or same words?
Yeah, I think sort of like what we talked about before is like there's the base level of you're getting things done all the time. Then there's a couple of big things that really move the needle for your team. And then when you talk about a career, especially as you get to higher levels, you're talking about like 2, 3, 4 years of effort is being bundled into a really short narrative. And you could say, Ethan, over the last 6 years, has launched these 34 projects. And that just becomes mind numbing. You're skimming through this list. Like, how do I know that Ethan hasn't just been in his job for 6 years and got a lot of stuff done? How do I recognize that he's doing VP level work, not just director and not just senior manager? Like, it's almost impossible to tell what's higher level work. And you certainly can't do it by volume of work. It's just, there's no way. And so, inevitably, especially as you get to higher levels, it becomes the one or two things that are, this is 100, like they've done 35 things. They're all very impressive. They did well. Let me tell you about this one story, this one thing. And you tell the story and you give the details. And that's the thing that really stands out in terms of like, this is the type of thing that this person has been doing. And if you read the description and explanation of this, you'd understand that this is 100% at that next level. And once you convince them that, like, I've given you these two stories, they're at this level, then you start to believe, like, okay, this person's done 35 things and at least two things at the next level. I start to believe this story that they deserve to be there. And for me, in my promotion to director, one of those stories was the internal transfer process at Amazon. I've told this story sometimes in my newsletter, but you remember I mentioned about like your peers can burn their teams down, or they can like really care about their teams. Well, I saw there was a team that was extremely unhappy with their manager, but Amazon's transfer process at the time didn't let you leave your team unless you've been there for a year. So the tenure of every single person on the team, like 10 engineers, was all less than 12 months, because as soon as they hit 12 months, they'd transfer off. And so I wrote a proposal that eventually got to Jeff Bezos that was, proposing that we don't put time limits on transfers. Like, hey, if you're unhappy, you should be able to just change different team at Amazon. We have plenty of openings. Here's a long list of reasons why. And I'm boiling down months of work down into a quick soundbite. And Jeff said yes, quoted me in the announcement to Amazon saying they're changing the transfer process. And like, that was really fun. I did that as a hobby. I did that whatever, but it influenced the entire company. And so that was mentioned by many people saying, oh yeah, like that changed the culture of a lot of teams, drastically changed, all these policies, and only a director could possibly do that kind of influence, therefore moving on. And so like that, it's not that doing that document was the work I did. It was just another proof, or a very clear explanation of doing something at that next level that people could sort of understand in their head.
And interestingly, that's a great example, because one of the questions I think people are going to want to know is, how do I get this project that can be my big win? Well, in that case, you created it. You saw a need. No one was asking you to do it. In fact, if you had come to me, you didn't work for me at that time, but if you just said like, oh, should I be spending my time on this? I would say something like, well, you can, but only if you're getting all your other stuff done.
Yep.
Because it wasn't work for any particular business. Instead, you were seeing a problem that was greater than any particular business and deciding you were going to solve it. So one way to make this impact is to find something where you can assign yourself side project work that can stand out. There are other ways to do it. My story of getting promoted to director was, very briefly, there was a project that some people on the team wanted to do and some didn't, that some thought was worth it and some didn't. And in front of our leadership, I took a strong stand, somewhat contrary to the leader, who basically said, I probably wouldn't do this project, but I will leave it to the team. And I said, well, I would, and so I'm gonna. And then the project worked out well and had a strong business outcome. Well, obviously, the SVP in that case could remember, okay, Ethan made a different call than me, and it worked. That was a standout, and that was cited in my document. So another way to do it is to make a controversial call. A third way, if you're in a little bit more of a structured org, is you do need to talk to your management and say, look, I need a big win or two. I need a new feature I can launch. I need to drive a launch. I need to build a new service. If you're not in software, I don't want to overly talk only to software people. I want to do the new marketing launch. I need to work with the marquee customer. I need to sign the big contract. You can talk to people and say, look, I need my sort of promotional poster. Let's do that. And if you find that you're always one of the drawbacks of modern work environments, if you think of something like a scrum, is everyone's just sort of taking tasks and working through them, and there's muddled ownership of everything. That leads to the last point I'll make. I do see people who have no big wins get promoted, and I call them lifetime achievement awards. And it's derogatory, okay? It's people I see get promoted after 8, 10, 12 years at a level where the company is like, wow, Ethan's been a senior manager here since before any of us can remember, and he doesn't suck, so I guess we probably owe it to him to move up. But this is not what any of you want, right? And I have friends who I would never say it to their face, but I feel they got lifetime achievement awards.
Sometimes they wear them down. It's like, I'm so tired of saying no.
Right. Yeah. And I feel so guilty because everyone around you has been promoted earlier. Mm-hmm. That is not what we're here to help you learn. So let's move on. And what we'll move on to, if you want a lot more on this, I teach a class. It starts in a little bit over a month, 6 weeks. It's on sale right now. It's deep, deep, deep on how to go from senior manager to the next level. It's literally called Beyond Senior Manager, Breaking Through to Executive. It's on sale right now through Maven's Fast Track promotion. And over 1,700 people have taken this, and they rate it 4.7 plus stars. So if you want more on this, it's there. And certainly I hope you would join me. But we're now going to do audience Q&A. And the thing I always have to point out here is we have 154 people listening. We'll only have time for the top 2 or 3 questions. No question has more than 11 votes. So we're going to go take the question with 11 votes. But that means 140 of you have expressed no opinion. So I sort of challenge you to do that. And I'll stop this share. And the first question, I'll let you, David, take first crack at this because I have a strong opinion. It says, can you talk about managing up? Define it, explain how important it is to success and the best methods. I have a whole class on this, so I have a lot to say. Therefore, you go first.
Like, I have so many points to say. So why don't you say your little points and I'll get into mine.
Oh, yeah, God. All right.
Yeah.
I think I'm trying to give you the room and then
I like it. I'm taking the room. I would say for me, the biggest, if you want to summarize, because I think there's 100 things you can do. If everyone has 8 teams reporting to them, you want to be the team where they say, I don't pay any attention over there because they always have things under control. Like I mentioned how you need to pay attention to the biggest project. You also sort of have to pay attention to problem areas. And so there's one big project on team number 1, and I'm always paying attention to what they're doing. And then there's a personnel problem on team 2, and I'm watching over there, and there's a couple projects slipping on 3 and 4. And so I'm just asking some questions. I want to be like the team 7 that just nails the deadlines. If problems happen, I say, I totally got it. Here's the 3 things I'm doing. I'll get back to you tomorrow. And I'm like, okay, go away. I have over and over again. I thought at the very beginning, I thought it was weirdly insulting. And I realized it was a really good sign was I've been told over and over again, do you really need your time in our 1-on-1? Because I think everything's under control and there's 7 fires going on. Can you sort of just go away? Mm-hmm. And I didn't realize how much I really liked that until later. And I was like, this is a really good sign because I like to chat with my very best employees and talk to them when things are going well. And when things are not going well, I sort of want them to go away so I can focus on other things. And so I think a lot of managing up is making sure your things are under control and then communicating when they're not, but proactively, here's what I'm doing. Here's when I'm going to get back to you. I'll let you know about this right away. So I'm never surprised or stressed. I don't get stressed if you say, here's the 4 things I'm going to do. And I'm like, yeah, that's all the things I would do too. So it sounds like you got it. And so really good communication proactively. If I ever have to ask a question, you've failed. So that's how I sort of think about it is competent as possible and then proactive communication.
Yeah. And you hit on one of the 2 big things I would say when managing up is really thinking about what does your manager need and what do you need from them and taking responsibility to make that easy by you driving it. So what they need usually is information. They need to know in advance, everything is good. Here's a few things you might be asked or some data points. But as Dave just said, if if the manager has to ask you a question, at some level you've failed to anticipate what they need. So you work hard at providing them what they need. By the way, in the style they like. Different managers have different styles. Some want lots of detail, some want a top line summary.
Yep.
Second is then also clearly telling them what you need. This project is on track. It has a potential blocker, blah, blah, blah. I want you to be aware that I may call you on Tuesday to escalate. And also, I need you to sign off on contract foo by Thursday. Because managers love, like, okay, if I hear on Tuesday you need an escalation, I've been warned, and yes, I'll go click the approve button on your travel or whatever it is. Managing up is both sides. And it's great to have someone who manages up to you well as long as they're not manipulating, as long as you don't find out later that they're shading things or politicizing them. So managing up is awesome to have happen. I hope that helps. And I don't know, Jason, if you want to throw in, if you haven't, the link to the Managing Up class, you can. Okay, next question is from Anonymous, and that's, how do you navigate a well-established team where most members have worked together for over a decade while you're new and have no prior connection and have limited experience in how the team operates? So I think this is a good question. How do you handle being the new person on a deeply established team?
Yeah, and I think the thing you don't want to do is try to show that you're valuable by quickly making decisions or making changes. Like, and I'm thinking primarily about becoming like a leader in this space. A lot of people will think of a leader as you need to contribute, and how do you contribute? As an IC, you just start coding, right? But as you become or doing your IC work, but as a leader, it's like, oh, how do I contribute when I'm sitting in the room quietly and everyone has pre-established opinions and pre-established whatever else? And I think primarily it's like being extremely open-minded and extremely curious. How did we make these decisions? Were you around when this decision was made? Can you explain it to me? I'd love to hear more about your opinions on this. What should we be doing next week? What should we be doing next year? I spend at least a few weeks, I would say, like basically having no opinion whatsoever on things. Like, I become a manager of the team. Like I mentioned, that, joining the devices org, they said, here's the one problem we're running into. I quickly unblocked them. But otherwise, let's run sprints as usual. Let's run whatever as usual. Where's the document? Who writes it? Is it one of you? Okay, great. Keep writing it. I want to see how you're doing it, what you're doing. I think it really it's sort of like people are nervous if someone senior leader or whatever comes into a space, like how are they going to mess up what we already have established? And you want to show respect. I think it sets the right tone when you say, I love what you're doing here. I want to hear more about it. I'm very excited. I'm very interested in hearing it. And are there anything you want me to work on? Any problems that you see? I'm happy to help, but I'm here to learn. And I think that's like the biggest tone setting that you would need to do as you come into an area that's established, is like, I am not here as the know-it-all. I am here as a very curious person who'd love to help someday.
Yeah, and I'll take this question a little bit from the other perspective just to cover it, which is, what if you join a team and your peers all know each other? And so it's not you as a leader, it's you joining a team where the cliques are already formed. Some people have been working together forever. Well, first, we have to acknowledge that's hard, right? Like, it's very tough to overcome 5-10 years of built up trust. So part of that is learning the norms. What is, culture can be defined as the way things get done around here. It's a practical, operational. So learn that, figure it out, ask people. Don't make your situation worse by being the one person who doesn't fit in. And I would say, okay, fit in can have two definitions. There's where you don't share your idea because you're afraid that it goes against what the established norm is. You want to be careful how much you rock the boat. That's true. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about if the team has a vibe, I don't want to, restrict anyone from their own freedom of expression. But if you want to join an existing group, you somewhat probably should conform to that culture where it's not completely unnatural for you. Because giving that whole group culture shock means what they'll do is they'll exclude you. And they won't do it as some hostile overtly biased thing. It's just, oh, well, we all like how we are and you aren't like that. So we're going to leave you over here on your own. We're not mean. It's just we have our thing and you're choosing not to be part of that thing. So you can stay out here on your island, right? We can call that new guy or new person island. So, the other thing is you do have to give it some time and then try and lean in and crack the ice. Some people are going to be more welcoming than others. The usual way into one of these groups is to make friends with one person who connects with you and then have them bring you into everybody else. Yep. Because the curmudgeons are like, well, but Ethan hasn't been here 7 years. You need somebody, but Dave could say, yes, but I have, and I think he's a huge ad. Why don't you listen to him? And that's your way in.
Yeah, the head of product for the ads group where I was at Meta briefly, it was just like a brief moment of that kind of success. As I asked them, like, I don't understand the ads business enough. Can you give me a rundown? And they spent like an hour diagramming things. And then I asked them for another meeting and said, I just want some more depth in ads. And she said, like, this is sort of surprising. You're the first engineering leader who's like gone this into depth into the ad business. Like, this is very exciting. I'm so excited to hear someone in engineering who cares this much about what I'm doing. I would love like to keep working on this more. And I found like that was like what you were mentioning. I just like in
Absolutely.
terms of
that's exactly
you make a strong connection. She's like, this is the person I want to partner with. Like, this is the kind of engineering leader I really want to talk to. So you suddenly get invited to meetings and they're leaning on you suddenly because it's like, hey, we're getting a pretty good relationship built here. So,
all right. So take one more question, and that question is, what are effective methods for one-on-one meetings to stand out? So I think this is upwards to your manager, your skip. Dave, I'm going to let you answer this because Jason, I have a write-up on it that he can kind of link to. So what would you say is a good one-on-one of people up to you and you up to others?
So me up to others, and I suppose it goes in both directions. Mm-hmm. I think a bad use of one-on-ones is here's what the work I've been doing. Like, and I would say work in particular, because I feel like there's this temptation to say, here's the 7 things I've been doing this week or the 2 weeks or whatever. And there's lots of other cases, like situations where you could say your status. You can give status reports in email. Like, should this be an email? Is that question in your head? And if it can be an email, then please don't waste your time. Like, it's just like you're filling space. And as a skip, especially, but as a manager, as an employee, like, it's very boring to talk about status. And there's lots of places for it. And so, as someone said, like, this is your one private time. There's no one listening. There's no one snooping. You're not in a big room and you're not sending impersonal emails. Like, if you can, this should be about private things that you want to talk to one other person about. And what is that? Like, a lot of times it is careers and feedback. Like, what I want, if I go to talk to my manager, for example, is, hey, I had that really big presentation yesterday afternoon. Like, I think it went okay, but I'm sure I did some things poorly. I would love to hear 1 or 2 bits of feedback, if you can, about what I could have done better, either prepping for it or during or after. Like, can you think of anything that you would have done slightly differently? Like, that, I think, is like by far the most valuable usage of time, because you don't want to ask that in public. And it's not right to send it in email in terms of, like, you don't get the nuances, the facial expressions, the details that you might get talking to a person. And so I think, like, using that time for what it's meant to be, which is private time, is by far like the key aspect there.
Yeah. And just to add a couple of quick things to that, I love it when people bring me something surprising.
Mm-hmm.
So they bring me an idea, they bring me a pitch, they bring me an insight they gathered from the work they're doing. That's where, even though I didn't manage Dave when he wrote up the transfer policy, I'm assuming you probably did tell your manager, like, hey, I've got this idea I'm working on, like, I don't agree with this transfer policy and I'm changing it. Yeah. That's the kind of thing I'm interested in, because it's not status. It's something you're doing that I wouldn't otherwise know about.
Yeah, and I think the feedback was very similar to what you said, which is like, okay, but as long as you're doing your job.
Yeah.
that's not your
fine,
job,
right?
Yeah.
That's important, though. Your manager trusts you, like, do your job, and then whatever you do with your own time.
Yeah.
I'm supportive, as long as it's not crazy.
You build that kind of trust over time, which is, again, in part because you are having these deeper conversations about what you're excited about, what are your personal passions, and like what kind of projects really get you going and like excited. And so I made it clear early on was like I always have something small, little personal project going on that's outside of my job, and we'd had agreement long in advance that I can run my personal projects, like whatever little things I'm doing, as long as I'm doing my main job. Yeah.
All right. So we'll wrap it up. I'm sorry for the questions we didn't get to. Of course, we're never going to get to them all. What I would say for all of you is, if my class can help you, you've got the link. Please take it. It's on sale for a few days as part of Maven Fast Track. But what you see here is Dave and I worked together for a relatively short period over 5 years ago. We built enough of a relationship that we consult each other on our businesses. We're happy to appear together. That's what you're looking to build with your own leaders. You're looking to build a relationship. Dave and I are not best friends. We don't hang out all the time, but we are collaborators who like to keep in touch and see what the other's doing and have a positive relationship, even long after, many years after our relatively shorter work window. And I'm sure he could create a similar talk with several other people he worked with, and so could I. So that's what helps you stand out, is those supportive relationships where the people you've collaborated with want to keep working with you even when they don't have a reason anymore, a work forcing function. Yep. And so with that, I'll thank you, Dave, for being a guest. Appreciate it very much.
Thanks for the invite.
And everyone else here, I hope you got a lot out of it. Please follow Scarlet Ink, Dave's newsletter, as well as me on LinkedIn or my newsletter. We do a lot for free that's out there that you can get good information from us. If you have a few dollars, you can get more. Either way, we want to help you grow and prosper. And with that, have a great, if you're in the U.S., it's coming up on Thanksgiving week. Have a great holiday weekend. Otherwise, anywhere in the world, have a great weekend. And see you all later.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.
Dave. Thanks, Ethan. Bye.